you're going to hit a wall in your career, in your relationships, in building something that matters, in trying to change your life. You're going to reach a point where that beginning is over and the finish line is still nowhere in sight. And you're standing there thinking, what if the thought I can't do this anymore doesn't always mean that you should quit? What if it's not proof that you're weak? What if it's not proof that you've made the wrong choice? Or not proof that the thing you cared about is over? Then what is it? Because there's a moment in every hard season where your brain starts asking a very dangerous question. And not at the beginning, not when hope is loud and not when the spark is brand new. Later, when you've already started, you've already cared, and you've already invested. When you've already told yourself that this is something that matters to you. And then the road starts to get long. The results start to get quiet. The finish line on that horizon is no closer than when you started this morning, and your brain starts whispering, maybe this means that I should quit. But what happens if you answer that question from the emptiest version of yourself? What happens if exhaustion puts on the mask of wisdom? What happens if relief starts sounding like clarity? So before you send that text, before you quit the job, before you abandon your dream, before you decide that the whole thing was just some big mistake, I want you to slow this moment down. And I want you to ask yourself one question. Am I actually done? Or am I just running empty? Because those two things can feel almost identical, but they are not the same. And knowing the difference can change your entire life. Howdy, friend. Today we're talking about something every single person listening to this is going to face at some point in your life. I've been producing commercials and corporate video for more than 3 decades. And I've seen this in clients, ad agency owners, CEOs, universities, and yeah, even in myself. And it goes like this. You're going to hit a wall in your career, in your relationships, in building something that matters, in trying to change your life. You're going to reach a point where that beginning is over and the finish line is still nowhere in sight. And you're standing there thinking, I don't know if I can keep doing this. And I want to say something that I want to be very clear about right up front. Sometimes quitting is the right decision. Sometimes leaving is the healthy decision. Sometimes changing direction is the brave decision. So this is not a conversation about forcing yourself to stay on a road that's hurting you. I'm not suggesting that you blindfold yourself and then just grind and hustle no matter what. This isn't about that. This is a conversation about the moment before you decide to quit. Because most of us were never taught how to tell the difference between a clear decision and an exhausted reaction. And that difference matters. Good or bad, it can change your life. Because when you're depleted, your brain doesn't say, I need rest. It says, this will never work. Or it says that you're failing, or just quit, then at least this feeling will stop. And today I want to help you slow that moment down. Because the question is not always, should I quit? Sometimes the better question is, what condition am I in while I'm trying to decide? That is where we need to begin. Let's talk about why quitting can feel so convincing when you are exhausted. Now, when you're rested, supported, and grounded, you can take a look at a hard situation with some perspective. You can say things like, this is difficult, but I can think clearly about it. Or, this isn't working, so maybe I need to adjust. Or you might even recognize, I need help. But when you're depleted, your brain isn't looking for wisdom. It's looking for escape. And that's not a character flaw, that's biology. When your system is overloaded, it wants the pressure to stop now. So your mind starts scanning for the fastest exit. Quit the project. Leave the room. Abandon the thing that you still care about. Stop trying, because if you stop trying, maybe it will stop hurting. And that is the trap. The relief of quitting can feel so powerful in your imagination that you mistake it for being the truth. But what if it's not the truth? What if it's just your nervous system saying, I'm overloaded and I need the pressure to come down? That's a very different problem, and it requires a very different response. There's a part of every meaningful change that nobody talks about enough, and I call it the long middle. Now, the beginning is exciting. The beginning has energy. You make the decision. You start the business. You commit to the relationship. You decide that you're finally going to change your life. You're going to build something. You're going to become something. You're going to move towards something that matters to you. And in the beginning, there's momentum. There's hope. There's a little bit of adrenaline. And that's that beautiful feeling of, this time I'm really doing it. But then that beginning ends, and now you're in the middle, the hard middle, the quiet middle, the part where you've been trying for a while, but the results are not enough yet to reassure you. You've put in the effort, but you're not where you thought you would be by now. You've changed some things, but life still feels heavy. You've made progress, but not enough to feel safe. And this is where your mind starts doing math that you never asked it to. How long is it going to take? Why is this still so hard? What if this never works? That is the long middle. And the long middle is dangerous because you're no longer being carried by the excitement of starting, but you're not yet being strengthened by the evidence of arriving. So what carries you then? That is the question. What carries you when the spark is gone and the proof hasn't shown up yet? Because if you don't know how to answer that, you'll start using your exhaustion as evidence. And that is where people get into trouble. Let me give you an image. Imagine that you're driving across the desert. The sun is rising behind you. There's nothing but endless tumbleweeds and sand. And at the beginning of the trip, it feels like an adventure. You have your coffee, you have your playlist, you roll the windows down, and you're thinking about where you're going. You're excited. But after hours and hours, everything starts to feel different. Now, the road is still there. The destination may still be real, but now the sun is hot. The road looks endless. There's no town in sight, no shade, no sign that says you are closer than you think. And then you look down at the fuel gauge, and it's low. Not completely empty, but low enough that your stomach drops. And then you see this sign by the side of the road that says, next gas 352 miles. And your readout says you're going to be 20 miles short. Now what happens? You stop thinking about the destination and you start thinking about survival. You start gripping the wheel, you start bargaining with the dashboard, you start hoping that gauge is somehow wrong. You start wondering if you made a huge mistake in just starting this journey. And you start wondering if you should quit and turn around. But here's the important part. Did the road suddenly become wrong because the fuel tank got low? Did the destination suddenly become impossible because the gauges scared you? The only thing you know for sure in that moment is this. You need fuel, enough not to be stranded in the desert. That's it. You don't yet know whether the trip is wrong. You don't know yet whether the destination is wrong. You don't know yet whether you should turn around. You know that you're low, and that's what happens in life. You get low on energy, low on hope, low on support, low on evidence that what you're doing is working. And then your mind makes a leap. It says, I'm low, therefore I should quit. But is that true? Are you lying to yourself to get relief? Or do you just need fuel before you make a clear decision? Here's the question I want you to write down. What condition am I in while I'm making this decision? Not what decision should I make right now? Not yet. First ask yourself, what condition am I in while I'm making this decision? Am I exhausted? Am I reacting to a bad week? Comparing myself to someone else? Am I trying to make a life decision after 3 nights of terrible sleep? Am I making this decision because I have clarity or because I want fast relief? That question is everything. Because relief is not the same as wisdom. Relief says, I want this bad feeling to stop. And wisdom says, I can see clearly. Relief is urgent. Wisdom can breathe. Relief wants to escape now, today. Wisdom takes the time to evaluate. Relief says, burn it down and walk away. But wisdom says, let's understand what's actually happening here. And I want you to start learning the difference between those two voices. Because one of those voices is trying to protect your future. And one of them is trying to end the discomfort. So how do we tell these two apart? Exhaustion doesn't always sound like exhaustion. This is why it's so sneaky. Exhaustion often sounds like a conclusion. It says, I'm not good at this, or this was not meant for me. It says if this was going to work, it would have worked by now. But what if you're tired because what you're doing is actually hard? What if you're tired because what you're doing is worthy, but taking longer than you expected? What if you're tired because you've been carrying too much without enough support? See, this is where the mistake happens. You take a real feeling and you turn it into a final verdict. The feeling is real. The verdict that you reach may not be. The exhaustion is real. The story that exhaustion tells you may not be. The discouragement is real. The conclusion you get may not be. And this is why I want you to pause before you make the decision and ask yourself a question. Because you don't want to let the most depleted version of you decide the fate of something that the clearest version of you still cares deeply about. So how do you begin to tell the difference? I want to give you 3 questions that you can ask yourself. Question number 1, is this decision still true when I am fully rested? That is actually the big one. If the only time that you want to quit is when you're exhausted or overwhelmed, embarrassed, or discouraged, that's some pretty cool information. It may not mean that you should ignore it, but it does mean that you should not rush. A grounded decision tends to remain steady. A depletion decision tends to spike when you're low. And that leads to question number 2. Do I want to quit the thing, or do I want to quit the way I'm carrying the thing? And that one matters more than you think. Maybe you don't want to quit the dream. Maybe you just want to quit doing it alone. Maybe you don't want to quit the job. Maybe you want to quit being available 24/7. Maybe you don't want to quit the relationship. Maybe you want to quit pretending that your needs don't matter. Sometimes the thing is not the problem. Sometimes the way that you're carrying it is the problem. And now we have to ask question number 3. What would I need before I could decide clearly? Not perfectly, clearly. Do I need sleep or conversation? Do I need more information, support? Do I need to stop comparing? Do I need to eat something, take a walk, and stop deciding my entire future at 11:47 at night while scrolling endlessly on my phone? Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is not make the decision yet. Sometimes the strongest move is to stabilize first. So let's talk about that. I want you to think about something in your life right now that feels heavy to you. Something that you've been tempted to quit. Maybe it's a dream or a relationship. Maybe it's a job. Maybe it's your own healing. Maybe it's simply trying to believe that life can get better. Now ask yourself honestly, am I done? Or am I just depleted? And don't rush the answer, because if you're done, you deserve to make that decision from a clear and grounded place. And if you're depleted, you deserve care before you make that decision. Either way, you deserve better than panic. You deserve better than shame. You deserve better than letting one hard stretch of the road define the entire road. So pause, breathe. Tell the truth about your condition. Be honest with yourself. That's the first step. Not forcing yourself forward, not quitting right away, not pretending that everything is just fine. Just telling the truth to yourself. What condition am I actually in right now? That is where clarity begins. And here's what I want you to do today. Pick one decision that you've been pressuring yourself to make or putting off. Just one. And write this sentence down. I won't make a permanent decision from a temporary state. Then underneath it, answer these 3 questions. Number 1, what condition am I actually in right now? Number 2, what would help me stabilize before I decide? And number 3, if I were rested, supported, and clear, what would I want to consider? That's it. That is the tool. Because sometimes you don't need to push harder. Sometimes you don't need to quit. Sometimes you need to interrupt that spiral long enough to stop mistaking depletion for destiny. And that's a skill. It's a life skill. It's a resilience skill, and it's a self-trust skill. Because every single person is going to hit moments where they feel empty. The question is whether you let empty make that decision for you. So if you're in that place right now, if you're tired, if your road feels long, if the finish line still feels too far away, if part of you is wondering whether you should just quit, I want you to hear me. Do not shame yourself for having that thought. That thought actually makes sense. You're human, you get tired, you get discouraged. We all reach our limits. But don't automatically believe that thought either. Don't treat exhaustion like it's a prophecy. Don't treat one empty stretch like the final truth about your life. Pause, stabilize, ask the better question. Am I actually done, or am I running empty? Because there's a difference. And once you can see the difference, you get your power back, you get to choose, you can adjust, you can rest, you can refuel, you can ask for help, you can change the plan, and you can keep going. Or you can leave from a place of clarity instead of collapse. That's what I want for you. Not forced perseverance, not panic quitting. clarity. Because you deserve to make your life decisions from the strongest, clearest, most honest version of you available. And today that may start with one simple sentence. I won't make a permanent decision from a temporary state. Now, today we talked about the long middle and what it feels like when you find yourself out there in the desert watching that fuel gauge slowly drop. But what about the moments when life doesn't just make the road long? What about the moments when life knocks you off the road completely? When something hits you so hard, it changes the way that you move, and it leaves you judging yourself as if nothing happened. Next time, I want to talk about that. And I'm going to tell you about the morning I went looking for a sand dollar in Galveston, and I found something very different instead. Because even if you never meet a real shark like I did, most of us eventually meet something that hits hard enough to change our pace, our trust, and the way that we see ourselves. And when that happens, the question becomes, how do you stop judging yourself like you should still be moving the same way? And that's where we're going to be going next. Thank you for being here today and taking care of yourself. I believe in you. I believe in what your future can become, and I believe in your ability to create a better life for yourself. Just make sure that you're making those decisions from a clear place, not from the emptiest part of the long middle, because you deserve to live a worthy life. And I'll see you in the next one, my worthy friend.